Welcome to another episode of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. We welcome your questions and comments to this or any show. Hit us up at dj@artistfirst.com. All past shows are available in podcast form. Pick them up at artistfirst.com. Here they are, your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Z-Man. It is Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Mm-hmm.
I'm channeling Margaret tonight.
This will be fun.
Yes, it would be fun because you're still here. No, hi.
Hi.
So tonight on The Soul of the Everyman, we will not be channeling Margaret, but we will be sort of channeling another well-known tyrant.
Well, thanks.
Now I'm in trouble. No, we won't be doing either of those things, but we will be talking a little bit about a very famous figure from history who everyone knows as Niccolo Machiavelli. And the term Machiavellian, which I'm sure people are familiar with, has come to be associated with somebody who's very devious and very politically aware and connected, and just has, it has wheels within wheels. That's the connotation of Machiavelli. But rather than kind of stick to our two main topics, death and love, we figured we combine them both and talk about Machiavelli.
Oh my!
In context, Machiavelli was not a. I wouldn't say he was a good person. He was sort of an amoral person in one regard, but he had, in many ways, a warrior spirit. And it is useful to study, the Prince and some of the other treatises that he wrote, not only for their wisdom, which even now today, can be applied to many situations, but also to learn what not to do. Machiavelli often gave negative examples of behavior. He was probably an undiagnosed or under-medicated psychopath, but But tonight, we are going to combine love and death and Machiavelli and talk about really something interesting, a quote of his which we're going to put up onto the website, which I think goes beyond his legacy. I think it was something which is relevant and echoes on down the ages. And what really the thrust of it is that all of us, in essence, have an outward appearance, which everybody sees, and all of us in that act of perception, especially when meeting someone for the first time, rely upon that initial perception, the kind of outward face, to gauge how we're going to interact with a person. Then there are societal norms, and there are, sort of cultural mores and politeness rules and so on. But in general, and we were just talking about this, it's within the first, sometimes as little as 3 seconds, maybe 3 to 10 seconds, when you meet someone for the first time, where you get an impression of them. And cited something I really can't, I don't have at the tip of my tongue, but which show that people make that first impression in that very short period of time, and then if you quiz them afterwards by basically giving them almost no time to have changed that impression, they will give you, you'll say, well, how much money do you think XYZ, this person makes? They'll say it. How smart do you think they are? What do you think all these different characteristics which they couldn't possibly really understand or know, but yet not only have formed an opinion of, but are willing to make maybe significant interactive decisions about what to do and how to talk to that person based on this incredibly small window of perception. And that's kind of the thrust of it, is why do we do that? Why do we do that? And then the other side of the question is, why is that the truth? Why is it that we aren't able to show our real selves? We always kind of show this outer facade. And the other half of what we're going to talk about tonight is that's in some ways good, because it's protective in a way to have this sort of outer face, this ability to be a chimera or be have a layer which protects the real you, if you will.
Most of us, I believe, develop that.
Yes.
You discover that most people really don't want to go deep in any kind of interaction. It may be just a quick, I need this piece of information.
I think it's very interesting. Where does that come from? Like, where it's sort of a chicken and the egg question, isn't it?
Where does what come from?
Well, okay, so let's say we start at the beginning of time when there's only two people, and there aren't these barriers, or at least we haven't had any time to kind of put up societal norms or anything. And so, where does this come from? This sort of need to hide, let's say, or protect oneself against against showing who you really are, or maybe the barrier is on the other side too. Where's this idea that you can, as you say, not go too deep? It's almost like this. I don't want to touch you, cooties. I don't want to go too deep in this. I'd rather deal with the surface.
Well, all that changes from your childhood, because as a child, you are who you are.
Yes.
You're not hiding anything. You're doing the interaction, and then you are taught that there are certain ways to interact that are appropriate, and those that are not.
And I think some of that, if I might say, is done with good intentions. It's almost like you want to protect this person. You can't. The old saying, you can't tell everybody everything. You got to keep some things, let's say, within the family, or within. There's a layer of protection that's being put upon you. That's also a barrier, but.
Well, most of the time you're trying to figure out what it is that you're doing and why you're reacting a certain way and who you. But once all that starts, you are thrust into a grouping. Usually with a family, there's plenty of room where they make allowances for, while you're just exploring, trying to figure things out. But when you're outside of the family, outside of your safe circle, that's when you start putting out feelers to figure out, is it okay for me to say this or observe this, or how is this going to be interpreted? Because that's when you begin to learn that what you say is not always taken the way you meant it. It can be interpreted in different ways depending upon the person who's listening.
Right. And isn't, though, that's a learned response? Just if we took it as in isolation, it's a learned response to a negative reaction. Because you go out, let's say, and you completely, without any filters, say what's exactly on your mind all the time. And you get pushback. People say, as you say, well, I didn't understand that, or I'm offended by that, or you can't do that. That's not that's against the rules, whatever the rules are, and you can make up any set of rules you want. But your complete freedom to be you is a superset of what people are willing to allow you to be.
Right. It is a very definite learned response. Because sometimes your observations are not appreciated.
Yeah. And I think if you cast your mind back, I'll say it for myself, there are always times when you were caught out as a young person. You were kind of sort of innocently saying whatever it was, X, Y, or Z. I can think of some fun things that happened to us with our kids in certain situations. But, the opinion just bursts forth. You're X. And as a child, there's a certain freedom that people will grant you. They say, well, you're a child. But yet you can immediately feel that you've somehow overstepped a boundary. You've said something that people will now laugh about, or there will be an anger response. And you very quickly get that sort of thrust back at you. Your as you said, your expression of who you really are, what you really felt at that moment. You felt it welled up from within. You didn't sit there and think, well, I'm going to say this and then they're going to say that. No, none of that. It's just like, whoa, just said, let it fly. And
as children always will.
As children always will. And you get the pushback, and I think immediately you feel this rejection. You've done something which everyone else, at least in your small universe, thinks is either foolish or wrong in some way. And you're instantly given the choice. Put on the face that we want you to have, or that we want to see, and hide those things. None of what you're thinking, none of the things you said as a child are not there anymore, because it's you. You see something, you think you have a definite opinion about it, and you'd love to say it, and you don't, because you've been taught, as you say, that this isn't appreciated. And I think overcoming that, this is a different sort of topic, but overcoming that and being yourself is both freeing, and actually you'll find that there are a larger, maybe an equivalent number of people who will appreciate the fact that you're being free. Sometimes they'll laugh, but sometimes they'll see great wisdom in the courage to be yourself. Because it does take courage. You have to kind of say, overcome the barrier which was imposed upon you. You must stay within these lines, or we will reject you. And you go, nope. I'm going to be Pippi Longstocking. I'm going to do my thing, and you're not going to like it, and I'm okay with that. And that's really a courageous act, now, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And that all depends on, well, life will teach you. Your family will teach you. If you can get along with your family, you can navigate your way, usually through relationships. But as a child, this is where your learning ground is. You can't say certain things, or if someone comes in and says this, how does this look on me? And I say, oh, that's ugly.
Makes you look fat.
Well, that doesn't even occur,
No.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying.
For children, no. It's like, oh, pretty color. But
Yeah.
they're not looking to see whether or not it's making it look fat. It's just...
No. But in other words, as a humorous example, your immediate reaction is the purest and truest one, generally speaking, from the heart.
From the heart. And as I said, if it's a member of your close family, they know it's you, and that's when you begin to teach them that, well, if someone else asks that question, you have to...
You can say that in here, but don't do that outside.
Yes. Okay, that was what I had to prep the kids with, because our group was very verbose. They wanted to talk about everything. And right before we went into a public place, like a mall or something, I used to turn around to them and say, all right, now, listen. We're all going to go in there, and I want your best behavior.
Right, exactly.
Which meant that you can't just shout out, oh, that man is fat.
Or whatever. Even better is what is your best behavior? Your best behavior is don't be yourself.
Well, it's just when you know that that lets them become aware of the fact that there are certain things you can do with the family and certain things you can't do outside. So that was the beginning of teaching the difference between the two, because they sat there and they said, okay, people may not understand what it is I'm trying to say, or they'll interpret what I'm saying as something that I didn't mean.
There's another aspect to this. I know this is a nice topic, but the other aspect to it is that you teach, either consciously or unconsciously, you teach your children, and yourself is taught, you yourself are taught, that your outward appearance speaks for you before someone even acknowledges you. So, it's put on your Sunday best, if you will. If that's just a phrase. You have to not be yourself. You have to put on this appearance because of what we talked about in the beginning of the show, which is this 3-second sort of instant judgment that people make on you. So outside the family, you learn that you can't do this or that and the other thing, but you're still perhaps within the group, and you're all together in the mall and just being on our behavior. But now you go out on your own into an unknown situation, and you're instantly judged by, the length of your hair, or what shoes you have on, or whether your clothing says I'm sloppy, or I'm overdressed, or I'm underdressed, or whatever. So all these things are the outward face that everybody sees, but it isn't just seeing. Because this seeing is more than that. This seeing is almost a rejection or an acceptance of you, prima facie. Let me give you an example. If you walk into a room and somebody's going to be giving a talk, and the speaker is somebody, he or she is dressed sloppily, or hasn't shaved, or has a big rip in their shirt, or whatever, you're instantly less likely to think that what they're going to have to say is relevant or valuable. Even if their message is the gospel truth, you've already put yourself into a mood that you don't want to hear it, because you reject them based on almost their serious. So that's a token of their seriousness, how much they prepared to come and perhaps give information. Like if you walk into a store and the place is dirty, or the place is disorganized, or the employee, any one of the employees is just a little rude to you, you're instantly less likely to think that you had a good experience in that store. This outward face is important in that regard.
Right. It's part of how we can begin to work together as a larger group, not just in your particular family or tribe. It's outside of that. And that's usually where people have to make room, understanding that maybe this is just not being understood the way it should be. I remember one time I was watching my mother, and she had asked a question to the cashier, and the cashier had repeated the instruction, and so my mom asked again because it wasn't clear. The way she had said it was sort of ambiguous. And the look on the cashier's face was interesting, because she looked at her and proceeded to say the exact same statement, only louder. It didn't occur to her that maybe the way she was saying it was ambiguous. She's just, well, you don't understand me, I'm just going to make it louder. And that seems to be a normal kind of response to things unless you've been trained to think and restate, but not using the exact same words.
Yes. Clarify rather than, or give context rather than just repeat yourself.
Well, that takes training, though, because you could see that this is the only way she knew how to communicate that instruction.
Right.
So it's interesting because we do the same thing when we meet people. The tendency is to say, okay, this is the way I should handle this person.
Right.
And you continue just to handle that person in that manner you've decided until something shakes you.
Right.
It's like a switch that goes on and said, okay, I talk to this one this way. I always talk to this one this way, this way, this way. And you have to train yourself to realize that, well, that's just this one piece.
Yeah, there's two sides to that, right? Because, and you're exactly correct. It happens to us, and we do it to people almost unconsciously as a vehicle for interaction with people who are not familiar to us, strangers in essence, in a society or in general. We have to have these sort of rules, ways of presenting yourself, ways of communicating. Otherwise, it becomes rapidly can become chaos. But in doing so, we've given up so much. We've given up all the richness that is inside every individual. Every individual human spark has what they really are, and in making ourselves more uniform, and in perhaps in the best intentions, giving these armors and these barriers and these walls to ourselves and to our children, we also make it so that we almost have found that the shortcut, the 3-second impression of who this person is, works pretty well most of the time. So it becomes the thing. It becomes, everyone sees what you appear to be. And so, I think they've done this. I know they've done this sort of study. They have put people, men and women, in situations where the opposite sex appears, and they're either, for the men, maybe they have a really fancy car, or for the women, they're really dressed beautifully, or they really have. So there's this instant impression of wealth, and they rate these people afterwards. What do you think of? What job do they have? Are they a lawyer or a doctor? And then they have the exact same people come out in a mid-sized car, sedan, whatever it is, and then so the impression of who someone is, of what you believe they are, is totally warped by this. They're the same people all the way through, but they get wildly different ratings or impressions of their intelligence or their.
Right.
Things that you couldn't possibly know, but yet, bam, there we are.
What they found is women have a tendency to judge according to what the man's work happens to be, what profession they are.
Right, if you tell them, right, yes.
Yeah, if you let them know that, because they did do this a number of times. I've seen different studies where they will show the person and just say, well, he's head surgeon of such and such hospital.
Right.
And immediately, their rating goes way up because,
right.
Oh, wait a minute. And that was almost secondary to the appearance.
Right.
And then another group, the same picture, but this time they told them that he was a florist.
Right.
And they were like, oh.
Isn't that nice?
So I found, I always found that fascinating, watching people rating according to what the guy's job was. Women, just women in general. And always you're like, what? Does it matter to you whether or not he can actually have a real conversation with you? Is he even interested in you?
But that's so. I mean, in this, in the swipe right world that we live in, in the Tinder and all that other nonsense, all these love making, matchmaking applications. Basically, you almost have put yourself in exactly that spot. You're given a small set of facts and perhaps a headshot of this person or that person, and you literally make a decision in seconds whether you would like to know more or throw them to the side. And yet, in any real relationship, when you get past that, and you get to be the few, we hear the statement. Well, we haven't really read the statement, but there is a much. It's like you say, I know 1,000 people, but I'm friends with like 3, and I have a significant relationship with 1. The one that is your significant relationship is the one with whom you can be most yourself, who knows the real you, and hopefully the real them. But yet, it's like this: if you have 500,000 followers on some social media site, none of those people know you or have any hope of knowing you except the 3-second impression of you. It's that it is now using this tendency for us to judge in 3 seconds and feel some sort of affinity or not into the power of influence, if you will.
Well, you make the decision on whether or not you want to engage.
Right. Engage,
yes.
Yes.
You gauge to see whether or not you want to engage.
Oh, that was so good. That was a nice double entendre. Nice.
But when that tendency is examined, does it really have any bearing on the fact that you think you want to engage with this person, you want to have a conversation with them, but is it worth it?
Well, and I would postulate, and we've reached the interesting part, we've reached the middle of the show, but it's very Machiavellian, isn't it?
Yes,
and
very much so.
Let's go back to the studio, have a little break, and think about Machiavelli.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lines is book 1 of the adventures of Devkalion, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
You are listening to The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And tonight we are talking about our friend Machiavelli. But we left right at the bottom of the first half hour with the idea of using the kind of this instant 3-second judgment that people make to influence large groups of people, and that is Machiavellian, and you see it writ large now in social media.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's all the virtue signaling.
Well, that and just all this the trending, all this all of these things. Machiavelli, he would understand these viscerally, and he would make even better use of them than we do today, because he was, as we mentioned, he was probably an under-medicated psychopath. But let's read the quote. Would you? Can you read it? This is the quote we're actually been talking about, and it'll be up on the website.
Okay.
Any moment.
Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are.
Mm.
Niccolo Machiavelli.
And I would say nowadays that the few is vanishingly few, and the everyone is literally everyone. I mean, the advent of social media is probably into its second decade now, but the ubiquity is probably still relatively new. I mean, within the last 5 years, let's say, the ubiquity of this 3-second impression has only grown. It's only grown, and I believe it's reached an almost. It's come to the point now where it's doing societal. I hesitate to say damage, but it certainly is changing society in many ways, both great and subtle. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, what's happened with having social media is that people have accepted a certain way of presentation.
Mm.
They want to appear a certain way on social media.
Mm.
And they all agree to that, which basically shifts the foundation of who a society actually is.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you become controllable. Manipulation is a lot easier because you want to be accepted by the group. So this is the way you're supposed to appear if you're accepted by the group. And then any kind of changes just comments on a board, and you are whipped back into line.
Yes, there's we've spoken about this before, but this everyone sees what you appear to be has really turned itself on its head, in that what you appear to be, or what is allowed to be seen, is now being enforced, and what you appear to be is no longer your choice.
Right.
So, and the saving grace of it all is that even though it appears to be the world, social media is not the world. However, there is enough, and that's what I mean by the societal damage or change, at least. There's enough of it influencing people, especially those who have allowed it to take up a larger portion of their lives.
Yeah, it's those that believe they need to have some sort of outline in order to do human interaction. They believe that they've got to have the list or the way it's supposed to be, and then they use that as their guide as opposed to allowing who they actually are to come through.
I think go ahead.
It's constantly modified.
Well, there's a few things there. I think that it has increased the separation between who you are and who you appear to be to an even greater extent. In older societies, there was a class or sometimes a caste system, and in those societies, you were, depending on what group you belonged to, you had to conform to that appearance. Your outward face was constrained, and going outside of it would get you tremendous blowback. Well, we've redone that in a almost more in almost a more airtight way. The regimentation of these types of social media outlets has become a new type of caste system or a new type of class system, and it used to be, through in some societies where you were able to move more freely amongst the, let's call them the economic classes, although that's certainly only one type of thing that was done. You were allowed to move up and down through, education or whatever. But in the social medias, none of that's so. The 3-second impression is all you get. You're never allowed to, in general, bring forth your qualifications or your. It's all like you said X, Y, Z, or you put up X, Y, Z picture. Or you agreed with this one and disagreed with that one, and that's enough. Nothing else matters. No context is allowed. You're not allowed to say, but I studied this for years. No one cares. I have 5,000 degrees in this. No one cares. I've been, all your credos, all your ability to redirect the narrative. If you're moving from one class to another in the older societies, you would say, yes, I was born into this economic condition, but now I've gathered the credentials to better myself, because people would give you that. They don't. That's been, the 3-second impression might have been, oh, you were the son of a pipe fitter, but once you realize that yes, now I have studied quantum physics for 500 years, I am now a top-notch physicist as well as the son of a pipe fitter. You've gone this way, and now no one can say that though you had one beginning that is who you are. You are many more things. You have all this stuff, your whole resume, your whole existence. That's been kind of raked away.
But the interesting thing is, people don't really seem to care.
Right. That's so true.
No, seriously. I mean, you may have accomplished this, but how does it? The question always arises in this person's mind. Well, how does that relate to me?
To me.
Yes.
And the, I hesitate to say egalitarianism. It becomes that, I don't care what credentials you have, my 3-second opinion is just as valid as your 3-second opinion.
Right.
Because everything is thrown to the side,
Yeah, that's exactly what has been happening. And people are screaming because they want their opinions to matter.
Yeah, we've gone a little bit afield of this, but this is exactly true. This is the consequence of Machiavelli's statement: is that everyone sees what you appear to be is exactly that. And if everyone's only given the snapshot and the what drive, which is what we're talking about, that level of detail of the person, then everyone's the opinion of the physicist with 25 years experience in quantum physics is being treated as validly as the guy who has some sort of crackpot theory about how things work. And if you can get enough people to buy into the 3-second impression of the crackpot, then they're the authority, if you know what I mean.
Well, that's how you build cliques.
Well, yes.
That's what all this has come to.
Yes, yes.
Okay, this is my clique. We believe this,
yes.
Regardless of, and it doesn't matter.
And it doesn't matter.
So, and you sit there and you go, well, how is this progressed from high school, where you've had a clique that just does this, and they all, this grouping stays in this. Are we all not individuals and gifted, each one of us, in unique ways?
Right.
Why is it that we have to look only at the projected form, and the person's interior just doesn't matter? And people get angry if their projected form isn't accepted.
Right.
But what happens if it turns out that the form you're projecting isn't actually who you are?
Which happens a lot.
Yeah. And the person is reacting to who you actually are, as opposed to what you want to project yourself as being.
Well, and I love what this is going, but I want to pull it back just to where we were. So Machiavelli's statement here is sort of in a vacuum, but knowing a little bit about him, and I know you studied him in school, and we studied him in school, I would say that what he's saying here is that this is your advantage from his point of view. Machiavelli was all about wielding power and finding ways to wield power. And one of his other famous sayings, in essence, was that no one is trustworthy, no one will ever keep faith with you, so you are free not to keep faith with them. Basically saying that whatever you want to do, if it's expedient, you should do it, because everyone will do the same to you. He's freeing this. The trust of a society is that if I'm good, you'll be good. Machiavelli's is, you're not going to be good, so I'm going to be bad first.
Right.
And this from that point of view, writ large into social media, this everyone sees what you appear to be is being used to influence and to lead and to in some ways manipulate both groups, both large and small. You said high school cliques, but in this case, to coin a phrase, all the world is a high school, and following Machiavellian terms, using this to your advantage is gaining power. And this, if you experience what you really are, uncovering it becomes increasingly difficult, because the Greek chorus of influenced people will, and you see it every day, they will instantly turn like a well-trained instrument and crush any opposition. The ability to fight on this battlefield almost requires it's difficult to do a successful asymmetric battle, and by that I mean a larger force versus a smaller force, which is called asymmetric fighting or asymmetric warfare. Usually allows the smaller force is able to take advantage of the fact that the larger force is less nimble or less reactive. But in this case, because of the way we're working in this, let's call it a battlefield, the rules of engagement are still always on this 3-second window. If you don't impress on the 3-second window, you're eliminated from a consideration, if you will, and it's dangerous in the same way that mobs are dangerous, because it's so easily influenced by the smallest of things. It's why you have, the old. I'm reminded of the Young Frankenstein line. A mob is an ugly thing, and then he gets, get the torches, off we go, because once you have a mob, they're easily led.
Right, and that is the lowest level of interaction. You're really not thinking, you're just reacting.
Yes. Isn't that something, too, from those studies, where, in essence, these reactions to whether or not a person was interesting based on their job, let's say, is at the lowest level of that interaction? If you say, well, would you go on a date with this person, and all you're given is two things, their picture and their job description, and if that's enough to get you to say yes or no, isn't that just a wonderful manipulator? Because it's so little information that's getting written into a whole story. It's like the triggers giving you a whole story about what happened. You have this tiny interaction, and you make up this whole story about they hate me and they always wanted to do this to me. That's in the small. This is in the gigantic and large.
It all goes back to what it is that your fears are. And
yes.
When in this particular case, we're watching the presentation of the men, and then the picture on the screen, and then their job, and it's the women who are reacting. Women's basic fear has to do with stability.
Security. Stability. Yep.
Yeah. So that becomes the primary focus.
Right.
For men, it didn't matter so much on money, but it had a lot to do with appearance.
Looks, yeah, almost entirely looks. Men are very superficial. No, we really are. There's no depth to us at all. We are like, there's that pond is really shallow. Moving on. Hi. Well, but yes, in the same way that the 3-second impression works, but it is dependent on what your prime driver is, if you will. Mm-hmm. And if your prime driver is, or one of them is security, you can use that as a manipulator. In this way, this very quick impression, properly targeted, So you say, you narrow the focus. Would you go on a date? The overarching question, which in some ways is, would you have a relationship or start a relationship or consider a relationship with this person?
Well, I think, they have those little, what do they call them, like mini dates where you get 5 minutes to talk to each other?
Speed dating. Yeah, that's
speed dating, yeah. It's like, would you put this person on a speed date?
Right.
Kind of thing.
Right.
But it's more than a little fascinating to see how things have changed. And what's changed really is how we interact. But the drivers seem to be exactly the same way they were thousands of years ago.
Yeah. For this one in particular, there's some biological imperatives, and people haven't changed. I think one of the wonderful fallacies that we tell ourselves, just to digress for a minute, is that somehow we're better than those who came before, or that we're smarter, or we have more, whatever technology, and yet the exact same people that are here today, we have not changed in any way significantly for probably the last at least 50,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so the cleverness and the fears and how we do things and what we do, it was all exactly the same, with less, let's say, knowledge, or maybe basic knowledge of how the world works. This is all incremental. We sit on top of 50,000 years worth of innovation and consider ourselves wise, but we couldn't recreate it except in 50,000 years. So the people haven't changed.
Mm-hmm. No, if you just think about that for a second.
Yeah.
Do you really know how your car works?
Very few do.
All you do is you take your key or your little fob and sit there and you start it. It's like, no. Do you know how it works? You know how long it took to create that thing?
Yes.
How many iterations had to happen? And how to get it to work for it to be reliable?
Yeah. I mean, you and I have had tremendous training in the sciences, but if I was sat in the middle of a field with all the possible raw materials and said, build yourself a car, even with all the raw materials, even if I knew how to do every piece of it, I think I would fail, because there's just too much to do.
But
I think, what I mean?
My point is, I know what you mean, but my point is the assumption.
Yes.
Okay, the arrogance that we have in thinking, well, all that is this.
Yeah.
We can always, and it's like, well, you can barely fill a tank on your car.
Right.
So you're saying that this is just so easy? This is not it's no appreciation for what has gone before you.
Right. Well, so we are those 50,000-year-old, what we call primitives in this society, because here we are, and we have the same basic drivers. And so, given that people are people, and that the properly focused 3-second impression can lead them, you form the mob out of the fear responses of the 3-second impression. I'm reminded, of the 1984, right, where they were saying basically, the 3 minutes hate. This is Machiavellian, because using the 50,000-year-old caveman brain, which is the same brain we have today, it's a great brain, but it's got pieces that you can pull along with very, very nice strings. And that is done with this what you appear to be stuff hooked into as a trigger for, I would go on a date with that guy because he's a neurosurgeon. Well, I wouldn't go on a date with that guy, same guy, he's a florist. Oh. Both are lies. He's not neither a neurosurgeon nor a florist. He's an actor.
Right. Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
but with lies and 3-second impressions, you can do a lot.
Well, it's very interesting to see that our minds, we as people, we want stories. And we create stories on very little information.
Almost none, yeah.
So it's fascinating because you have to come to that inner acknowledgement that you really want to have a story told.
Well, and maybe since we're coming up to the end here, let's wind it up with this. Let's be less trustful of ourselves. In other words, when the story is being told, the awareness I think that would we take away from Machiavelli is that it's a story, and we should let it be less influential, or try to let it be less influential. But anyway, our story here is coming to an unfortunate end. So our hour just flies by, and when you're talking about Machiavelli and life and death. So I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret. And thank you for listening.